Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be replacing the lifters, which means we have to take the high pressure oil pump out and its branch tube. Now, you can take the branch tube off without taking the high pressure oil pump out. So you would remove the two 8mm bolts in the back. But since we're here, we're going to replace this STC fitting, which it's really not an STC anymore, but that's just what we call it. So we're going to be replacing this fitting just because we're here. So to replace this fitting, realistically, we should have to take out this high pressure oil pump, but we're going to be taking out this branch tube as well. So in order to get all this apart, it's just a bunch of Torx bits and some 10mm and 8mm. And you'll need a crow's foot to torque down this fitting again in the top of the high pressure oil pump. So we're going to pull this thing out and make sure that everything's good here and reset the STC fitting and reset the branch tube. So we have a Ford kit, and there's a lot of aftermarket fakes for these Ford kits out there. So make sure that you don't screw yourself and order a non-OEM setup, even though it says it's an OEM part. So when you buy the fitting here from Ford, they give you an isolation bracket. So basically it uses this hole and these two holes to get this block perfectly aligned, and then also make sure that it threads in here enough times. So it's kind of a little bit of a mess, but it requires this hole. So you almost have to take the high pressure oil pump out to change the fitting here. So we'll be taking out these two Torx here and this one Torx here, and these are a 45. And if you don't have a long 45, you're going to need it, because you can see that there's recesses here in this pump, and that's to allow the bit to come up high enough so you can't actually use a fat or short T45 here, so you need to use a longer one. So we're going to get this pump out of here, get these two 8mm bolts out, and then we'll work on getting the branch tube out, which is a T30 here, and then we'll work on getting the lifters out underneath that. So we have a 10mm here for the lifters there. So we're going to go ahead and start by getting these two 8mm bolts out and these Torx out, and get this high pressure oil pump out of the way so we can start doing the branch tube and also the lifters. So we'll get these 8mm bolts out of here. And then we have our T45, and I have a short extension on it here to get it up above the fitting for the IPR. So we're going to go ahead and break these loose. So at this point now, we should be able to pull this out and set it off to the side here. Now, if you were not doing the STC fitting, you would be fine leaving the high pressure oil pump alone, but we removed it so that we could actually change that fitting out. So you can see we have an O-ring here. We'll be changing that O-ring, and we'll also be making sure that we don't have any issues down inside on top of the cam here, because you can see the top now. But we're going to go ahead and start getting this branch tube out of the way. There's also an O-ring on this branch tube. So you want to make sure that if you're not replacing the branch tube, that you replace this O-ring, and it should come in with the kit. So to get the branch tube out, we have a T30 on each side here. You can see as soon as I loosened that one up, the branch tube got very flimsy here. Now once we have the branch tube loose, we can slide it out the back here. So now we have the branch tube slid completely out. We're going to clean this very well before we put it back in. So with our branch tube out of the way here, we can go ahead and pull the plastic retainer out. And then we have our lifters here. Now we're going to be replacing these lifters, but you can inspect these for any kind of damage if you wish. But we're going to be replacing these. And some of them here, so like you can reach down in the back here to pull these back ones out, which is kind of handy. However, the ones in the front, you'll have to use a pick or a magnet to get them out of there, because like I can't get to that one very easily. So we'll get a magnet, pull them out of there, get them out of the bores. And since this engine has had no oil in it for some time, all of the lifters are completely collapsed. So we don't have to worry about rotating the engine around to get these to not be a problem. So we just got a magnet here. Just gonna pull these out of their bores. And now that we have these out, we can go ahead and work on getting all of the other ones out. So we're just going to follow the same process here, which is a 10mm bolt in the front here. So we'll take that bolt out and pull its plastic retainer out, and then pull the lifters out of there, and do the same thing on the other side. Now when you pull the plastic retainer out, you may get a lifter with it, which is perfectly fine. And you'll want to inspect these lifters when you pull them out, because you could have issues. So like this one doesn't want to come out. This one slides out nicely. But you could have damage to the roller side of this, and that would indicate that you have cam damage also. So if you end up finding a lifter that is damaged, you're probably going to have to end up replacing your cam. So when you get one that doesn't want to come out, like this guy here, got to try to force it out. Which that one is not coming out. So we end up having to flip the engine over and push it out from the bottom side. But can't do that because there's an oil pan in the way now. So we'll have to get that guy out of there one way or another. There we go. Just had to get a good grip on it. Ended up destroying the top of it, getting it out of there. But we got it out, and there is no damage on that roller either. So we're going to repeat this process on the other side. So the lifters. So we got everything out of here. And if you buy the Ford lifters, it's going to come in a big old sealed bag. All right. So you can see that they don't fall out of here or anything like that. But anyway, so it comes with your new plastic retainer, and it comes with 4 lifters in each bag here. So each one of those bags is in another bag, which is in a box. So there are better lifters you can buy, but we chose to go with the OEM route because they should realistically be fine. Anyway, so there's prep for the lifters. Depends on who you ask. They say, hey, let them sit in oil overnight, whatever. So the problem with letting them sit in the oil overnight is they get pumped up, and then they kind of give you an issue with the valves. So I've seen where guys just say, hey, clean them up real good, get the roller lubricated, and put them in. So the only thing I think we're going to do is we're going to take the lifters and we'll get them about halfway submerged with oil and let that oil kind of get in there. We're not going to be worried too much about filling them up with oil because we don't want to have a hydro lock type scenario. where you go to try to rotate the engine over and it won't rotate over because the lifters are too pumped up, and then you get valves that it's opening all the valves at the same time. So we're going to go ahead and oil the bottom of the lifters. I don't think we're going to let them sit overnight submerged in oil. So, because by the time we get this thing put back together, I'm sure they will have been pumped down anyway. And what we'll probably end up doing is putting a little bit of oil in the top of the lifter when we go to put the push rods in. And then you can also fill up the push rods when you go to put those back in. However, what we're going to do is we're going to get all these lifters unboxed, get them in there a little bit of an oil bath, and then start the reassembly process. While we're waiting for those lifters to get thoroughly lubricated, we're going to go ahead and change our fitting on the pump here. Now, to do the fitting, you need to remove the actual fitting itself. And we have it locked in a vise here. So we're going to take a 15/16, just loosen this up, and then you can spin the whole thing out. So now that we've got this out of here, we're going to clean this out a little bit and make sure that there's no debris in there from the O-ring or any of the threads. So once we do that, we can go ahead and start getting our new kit installed. So if you buy one of these kits, and it doesn't come in a Ford bag, you probably got a counterfeit one. So there's tons of counterfeits out there. So make sure that when you're buying your Ford parts, make sure you're getting the right stuff. So the main things in the kit we need to be concerned about are the template here, your little jig, and then all the plastic pieces and bolts and parts and everything. So we have our new fitting here. We're going to be installing this. Now, before installing this, you want to put a little bit of lubrication on this O-ring. We still have some oil in the threads here, so that will lubricate our threads. So like always, we lubricate the O-rings. And then we're going to thread this in 5 turns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that should set us up to have this aligned. As you can see there, the bolt fell right in. And just to demonstrate, if we did 1 too many turns, that through there doesn't let, it lets these line up, okay? But you can see that it's not straight across here. So this jig serves a purpose for lining this all up. So whenever this is all together here, everything is true and straight. Now the purpose of 1 bolt up, 1 bolt down is so that you can put these little wing nuts on without them interfering with each other. So we're going to go ahead and get all of these put on here. And we're just going to go ahead and snug up this jam nut. So we need to torque this jam nut down. So obviously we can't torque with a wrench here. So this actually gets to be 49 foot-pounds. So I can give this a little bit of a snug here, and we'll get the torque wrench on it. So we've got our crow's foot here. Got our torque wrench set at 49. So there we go. We finally got that torqued on there. Crow's foot's a little bit thin for doing that job there, but we got it tightened up. So now with that done, we can go ahead and remove all of these little plastic fittings and bolts and everything like that. So we'll get these out of the way. Then we have a properly aligned fitting here, and we will also be replacing the port on the top here at the very top of your screen. So we're replacing that, not directly, but we're going to get this put back in before we start replacing all of these pieces. But this is the fitting here for the branch tube. So once we get all of the lifters reinstalled, we can go ahead and get this thing put back on. Now I said that I wasn't going to soak these whole things, but I put a lot of oil in there, so I'd rather them be safe than sorry. So we're just going to pull each one of these out and put them in their bores and make sure that they go the right way, because it's very easy to screw this up. You want to make sure that the roller goes this way and not this way. So there's flat spots on the actual lifter. You want to make sure that the flat spots are up and down. Now the alternative to that is you can slip them in their holders here, which actually might be easier, and slide them down in. You just got to make sure that they do not come out when you go to put them inside the block here. So these come with new holders, and as you can see, that one decided to go for a trip there. So this will face them all the right way, and you can kind of just slide them down in here carefully. So that works very well. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these two out that I just laid in there, stick them back in the oil for now. And we'll get the next set in here. I'm doing this over the block because it doesn't matter how much oil I get all over this block. We're going to end up cleaning off anything anyway. So we're just making a mess of it here. So these are all going the right way here. And we'll just take them and slide them down in here nice. So we'll repeat that for the front and the front on the other side here. So you can slide them in the holders just like this. We do this over the block so that we don't have to worry about them falling too far if they decide to pop themselves out. So you take it and just slide it down in here nice. And we have all of our lifters installed now. And putting them in the retainers makes this much easier to do. So now we can go ahead and bolt the forward ones down and get our branch tube put back in and get it bolted down. So we can put our 10mm bolts back in the front here. You can take our branch tube that we cleaned out and slide it back in here. and mount it back with the T30 Torx. So we've also removed the O-ring here for the base of the high pressure oil pump and the O-ring on the branch tube. Now, when you remove this O-ring, it will leave a coating of Teflon in the boss here. You want to take a little bit of brake clean and clean all of that yellow off of there, or any other color that's left, because that Teflon can actually cause you a leak. If you've watched the fuel bowl video I put up, they talk about the Teflon causing problems. You need to make sure that you need to take this Teflon off of there. Make sure you have a nice clean seal there. Once again, always lubricate your O-rings. So we got our new O-rings here. Now that we have these installed, we can place our high pressure oil pump back in the valley here and get everything lined up before we torque it all down. So your new kit will come with new Ford bolts for the high pressure oil pump mount. And new bolts for the fitting in the back here. Now I like to snug up all these bolts before I torque them all. So we're going to get them all closed up here, and then we'll tighten down the ones inside the lifters here. We'll tighten those bolts down after we get the high pressure oil pump tightened down, and then also this fitting tightened down, and then we'll do those and the lifters there. So we'll get all this tightened down, torqued to spec, and then we can just take our way and move forward. So our torques here should be 23 foot-pounds. Well, I got to wind this one in a good bit. So those get to be 23. These guys down here are 124 inch-pounds. So we're going to get those torqued next. So we've got 124 inch-pounds on these, and then the end of the branch tube inside the valley here would be 120 inch-pounds or 10 foot-pounds. So we've got everything torqued here. We've already taken the O-ring off of the high pressure oil pump there. We have a new one to go on. And before we put the cover on, we will lubricate this up. But for now, it's on there. And we also have to rebuild the IPR and put it on. But we will put that on after we put the cover on, because we can't put the IPR in before we put the cover on. So I wanted to cover replacing the lifters with you, and also replacing the branch tube fitting and removing the branch tube and getting all of the O-rings replaced on this high pressure oil pump here. So hopefully this will help you guys out working on your 6-liter. So we got all this put together here. We got everything refreshed here. It's an oily mess, but that's okay. We will install the rest of this stuff very shortly. We still have to do the IPR cooler, and we still have to put the cover on back here, but we're going to worry about putting this all back together here in a little bit. The cover is a very simple setup, and I don't really want to put the cover on until we put the rear cover back on as well, since it seals with it. Now we can place the cover on here if we wanted to, just to keep this protected, which I may do, but we still need to do a lot more to this engine before we're ready to put this cover back on. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helps you work on your truck or your van, and catch you on the next one.